Hello, travelers. Boardman21 here, and today got a build for you. This is Ytunabe's Lightning Bladedancer, and this is going to be based around using one or two of your daggers that are the Fulgurite shard unique daggers that you can get. They give added lightning damage to Shurikens and Lethal Mirage, so both will hit really hard. This build is mostly based around just using Shurikens and proccing lots of shadows that will also proc all of your Shurikens. They'll throw it in a line and all of their projectiles will be able to hit the same target, which allows for huge AoE as well as great single target damage, and you can absolutely wipe everything through. You'll have high critical strike chance, lightning penetration, high lightning damage, so it's very powerful. So let's get into the skills, the interactions, and just how it works. For skills, I'm running Lethal Mirage, Shift, Synchronized Strike, Smoke Bomb, and Shurikens. For Lethal Mirage, we have this set up to try and get as many Mirages as possible, even converting our shadows into additional Mirages. And then we also have the extra lightning damage converted to lightning penetration, and then on top of all of that, get extra damage based on how many stacks of bleed are on the enemy, up to a maximum. But since we can apply a ton of stacks of any element we want with the Shurikens, using this against a boss after you've already hit them once with Shurikens is going to guarantee you're hitting really, really hard. So we have 2 points in Ravaging Mirage, 1 point in Shadow Eater, which gives you an additional Mirage per shadow that you had active. So using this right after Synchronized Strike will give you 4 additional Mirages. Then 4 points in Umbral Feast, which will give you 40% more damage dealt with your Mirages based on per shadow that you had. And we'll have 4 shadows or 5 if you shifted and use Synchronized Strike. And this is going to give you up to 200% more damage with Lethal Mirage, which is just crazy. 2 points in Umbral Transversion for some haste, 1 point in Without a Trace for a high kill threshold so you can finish off a boss with this as well. 2 points in Umbral Expanse for 2 more additional Mirages, 1 point in Majokan Blade for the melee physical damage, 2 points in Wounding Ambush for the physical penetration, which will get converted to lightning penetration with the 1 point in Shocking Grasp. This also adds 20 melee lightning damage to it. And then Bleed and Poison becomes Shock Chance. We have 2 points in Weeping Cuts, and then we have 2 points in Sundering Blows. So this Bleed Chance does become Shock Chance, and the 2 points in Sundering Blows, which gives us hit damage per bleed stack, whether that converts or not, you'll either put a bunch of stacks of Shock on with this or with your Shurikens, but because we're applying Bleed with the Shurikens, you'll already have a ton of stacks of Bleed on the enemy, and that's going to allow you to hit this 60% more damage really, really easily. For Shift, we have this set up so that we'll proc the Shurikens with it. You'll get a shadow with it, get haste, get some mana back. You'll be invulnerable while shifting, and then on top of all that, you'll get an incredible amount of dodge. So we've got 2 points in Shadow Recuperation, 5 points in Sleight of Hand, 4 points in Swift Recovery, 3 points in Momentum, 1 point in Lasting Presence, 1 point in Shadow Slip, and 4 points in Elusive, as you do have some dex in this build, so it will give you a crazy amount of flat dodge rating for 1 second after you have shifted. For Synchronized Strike, we have this up just to give us our 4 shadows. We don't really care what else you do with it. You can give yourself health per shadow. You can give yourself increased attack speed to make it quicker. But what I've done here is I've gone with 1 point in Growing Darkness, 5 points in Foreshadowing to increase the damage done by shadows within the next 4 seconds of their creation. So when you use this skill and then you Shurikens your shadows, all the Shurikens they do will have 200% increased damage. 1 point in Dark Allies so that we get 4 shadows with it. 2 points in Dynamics for mana efficiency. You do want to cap this hound if you're having any sort of mana issues. 5 points in Shadow Rush to gain 200 health per shadow created within 4 seconds after using Synchronized Strike. So this really only helps you if you use Synchronized Strike back to back within 4 seconds. Against bosses you tend to do this, which can help you after a hit. Since we are making 4 shadows, this is going to allow you to gain 800 health back, which is really nice, especially if you haven't hit an enemy and aren't able to get any leech. We have 5 points in Art of the Blade to increase the attack speed of it, and this 1 point I put in for perfect coordination because having the shadows jump inward with you makes it a lot easier to hit a single target with them. If you don't have this, they kind of spread out a little bit more, and it can be rather difficult to hit the same target. You can still do it, you just have to aim a little bit better with it. This also increases the mana cost, so if you're really suffering with mana, I would just recommend taking this out, possibly even taking out the one for the double shadows just until you're able to get that mana under control, whether that means you have increased mana regeneration or you get some mana efficiency on some idols, or I believe you can also get it on chest and helm for Synchronized Strike itself. Our mana cost here is quite expensive. You can definitely get that down into the 50s, low 60s. For Smoke Bomb, we just have this set up. I don't really use it very much, but I have it set up for the Dust Shrouds to give us extra dodge rating and glancing blow. It also have Shurikens, get some bleed chance, and you can leech some extra damage. So we got 1 point in Shrouded in Darkness, 4 points in Rapid Concealment, 5 points in Lingering Fumes, 5 points in Smoke Blades, 2 points in Hidden Blows, and 3 points in Blood Bandit. You can also take some of those points out, move it into slow, armor shred, do anything that you want with this. Like I said, you could even switch it out for decoy if you wanted. I'm not really using Smoke Bomb at all in any of my gameplay, and just as I played the character, I didn't use it very much, occasionally against bosses. For Shurikens, we have this set up so that our Shurikens will spin around us so that they can all hit the same target and have pierce, but you don't want to do Chakram, and you want to have it set up to where your shadows are going to be able to use it as well. So what we have here is 3 points in Alacrity, gives attack speed, 1 point in Thin Shurikens, gives us extra projectiles, 1 point in Blade Shield, makes it cast around us. Now, this is what's important because it's cast around us, and we have 4 points in Ethereal Blades for that 100% pierce. But the best part about this is your shadows can't have them orbiting around them. So instead, they'll fire them. But since this allows you to hit the same target, that makes it to where the Shurikens that are fired by your shadows can all hit the same target as long as they're close enough to all be hit by the projectile. We then have 1 point in Bladed Armor for increased armor. You don't want to go down this route and choose the Shurikens in a line. You don't want to do the Chakram. We have 1 point in Weighted Projectiles, 2 points in Deep Cuts for bleed chance, 1 point in Fan of Blades for additional Shurikens, so we have as many projectiles as possible, 3 points in Entry Points so that you get 6% more damage per ailment stack. Now, we're applying bleed, and we even had some poison chance on hit, but we're doing about 45 hits with a single cast of this, which means we have already hit the maximum hit damage halfway through those hits. So if you happen to get all your Shurikens to hit the same target, it's going to be doing incredible damage before even the last Shuriken has already done its hit. And then we have 3 points in Skilliant Steel. This gives us more damage, but also reduces the mana cost. Between this and having 2 rings that have -3 throwing cost, you can make the cost 0 for Shurikens. The reason that's important is you can turn it into a mana generator, and that helps offset the mana cost of Synchronized Strike. For passives, I've got 30 points in the Rogue base class with 8 points in Guile, 5 points in Evasion, 5 points in Agility, 1 point in Twin Blade, 5 points in Dodge and Parry, 2 points in Duelist, and 4 points in Sapping Strikes. This 4 points in Sapping Strikes, since your 0 costing Shurikens, you can get down to a 0 mana cost, it will actually generate you 8 mana. For Marksman, we have 20 points, 8 points in Focus Fire, 2 points in Assassin's Quiver, and 10 points in Wound Maker. Having this 100% critical strike vulnerability chance makes it to where within the first few Shurikens hitting an enemy, you're basically guaranteed crits after that. Now, you can practice around. I haven't actually tried taking these out. You can probably get away with taking all of these out, and inside the Bladedancer tree, which we have 61 points, you can focus on just the critical vulnerability here by putting 5 points in and have a 25% chance on hit. That 25% chance here could save you a bunch of points, so you could put more into the Blade Master tree or into the base rogue class if you wanted, and still have crits within the first probably 10 or so hits. But for the Bladedancer, we have 61 points. 8 of them in Cloak of Shadows, 8 of them in Pursuit, 8 in Shroud of Dusk, 6 in Sky Synthesis, 3 in Scarlet Stream, 5 in Blood Dance, 6 in Asuvant's Pact, 1 in Critical Eye, 5 in All In, and 1 in Death's Door. If you do get those 20 points out of the Marksman, I definitely recommend getting Death's Door filled up and getting Critical Eye filled up, and then the rest you can put anywhere else that you want. 5 points in Spellbreaker, and the last 5 in Shadow Master. For uniques, idols, gear, and blessing, there are several different idols that you can wear. I've got a bunch of different ones on here. You can go with increased health and elemental resist, hybrid health, whichever one you want to do. I wanted to get most of my elemental resist through the use of idols. We have a 1x4 on that increases the lightning damage added with shurikens. It also increases damage dealt by skills used by shadows. This is like the perfect hybrid idol that you can get for DPS, so you can wear up to 2 of those if you'd like. We have some 1x1s to cover resistances, and then we have a 1x3. This one just increases armor shred effects, so if you have armor shred on hit, you do a ton of hits, so you can actually get a huge amount of armor shred on enemies, and this will allow you to deal up to, say they have 0 armor, you could get up to 85% more damage if you can shred enough, which I believe at level 100 you have to shred somewhere around, I think it's 13,000, I believe, is somewhere in that range. So it would take a little bit of effect on top of a ton of hits to hit that 13,000 shredded armor on an enemy. For uniques, there are 2 types of uniques that I'm wearing on this build. You can also have a 3rd unique for a survivability type. I'll put both build planners into the description below as well as the written guide. So the weapon is the Fulgurite shard. This build is based around this. You do not have to wear 2 of them though. 2 of them will increase the damage you do because they add a ton of lightning damage for shurikens, especially if you get good rolls. However, you can just wear 1, and then instead of dual wielding, you can throw on a Shield of Bastion and have a 100% chance to block nearby hits, which is really going to increase your survivability. Now, this build's not the squishiest thing ever. It's actually kind of tanky, but you can make it way tankier. And the gameplay that I've shown you, we didn't die. We had, we were doing empowered content, but if you throw on the shield, you can go much higher into the empowered content, but you will deal slightly less damage. However, it does put on a lot of damage anyway, so that's not a bad thing. The other one you want is Lyraka's Claws, and this gives you that throwing critical strike multiplier up to 130%, which is a huge damage boost since we are going to be doing almost 100% critical strike hits with our throwing attack shurikens. And this will also give you +2 projectiles with shurikens, which is huge. That's actually a total of 10 extra hits if you have 4 shadows plus the 2 you threw, or if you have 5 shadows, the maximum. That's a total of 12 additional hits just for wearing these gloves every time that you cast shurikens with your 5 shadows up, which is huge. For the rest of the gear, nothing super special. Make sure that on the rings you get the -3 throwing cost. You're going to need that for shurikens to be free. For your chest and helm, you can get added lightning damage with shurikens. You can also get increased damage dealt by skills used by shadows, which is shurikens. And then, of course, you can get increased health and increased dodge. All of those are going to increase your survivability. Nothing else is really that special. Make sure to get your critical strike avoidance and your resistances, and if you have room, squeeze in your endurance. For blessings, nothing special. Most of the blessings is just going to give you a little extra defense, so you can definitely get some increased armor and increased dodge rating, as well as some additional mana and some additional flat dodge rating. Other than that, the blessings are basically up to you to decide what you would like for each one of them, as there's nothing that's going to make or break the build. For the character sheet, as you can see, we have almost 1900 health. We got about 150 mana. We're capped on all of our resistances except for poison. We got about 16% armor, 40% dodge, and remember, I don't have the correct blessings that I have in the build planner for you set up, so we could have even more dodge, could have even more armor, and we also don't have the critical strike avoidance blessing or the endurance blessing, so you can work on those to definitely get these up. So in empowered content, we're surviving and actually doing quite well, even without 100% critical strike avoidance, but I definitely recommend working on getting that up to 100% so that you don't take one of those massive one hits that crit hit you pretty hard. For damage, we have about 300% critical strike multiplier, and for our throwing attack damage, we're sitting at about 150% and almost 200% lightning damage. Alright, so for how to play this build, the skill rotation, and how I play it, I sometimes like to put shift on autocast just to be using it, but for the most part, you're just going to run around shift and then use synchronized strike and use shurikens whenever you want to deal the damage. So you can shift, shift, shift. This will get some shurikens going around you. The shurikens themselves actually hit for pretty good damage. You can see I'm hitting for about 6,000 damage here, up to 10,000. The more armor shred and things that you apply, the more damage you'll do, obviously. We also get that shadow when we shift. So ultimately, you could shift in, get a shadow, use synchronized strike to get some shadows, and then throw your shurikens, which you can see is just a ton. So if you use synchronized strike, get your shadows on, and then aim them at the same target, you get a ton of hits all on that same target. everyone's going to be throwing a ton of shurikens, and all of those can hit the same target, which is going to allow for massive damage. So again, that's basically how you play it. Synchronized Strike in, use shurikens, have that huge cone shape AoE, shift around, do it again, throw on a smoke bomb when you need a little extra survivability, and then of course you have Lethal Mirage, which isn't really super active in this build, but of course you can always use it. So go ahead and throw out your Synchronized Strike and then throw in Lethal Mirage if you want. And when you do that, you'll see here we actually hit for some pretty good numbers. It's sitting for 20 to 30k damage, and you'll have a ton of them doing hits. That's more for like single target, but it's also going to take a lot more mana. You're almost better off just continuing to use Synchronized Strike and firing off all of the shurikens, just so you can do as much damage as possible as quickly as possible. And that'll be it. You don't want to spam it too much, too fast. You will run out of mana when your mana does start to get low. So if we do it a few times here and the mana actually starts to get down a little bit, I can just manually cast our good old shurikens over and over again, and it'll give me a little bit extra boost to get that mana back up. In fact, we'll get 8 mana every time that we cast it. So for leveling this build, you might be able to get away with doing a 1 to whatever you decide to play guide on this. I don't know if I would start it out as a new character. The reason being, it does revolve around having the uniques. So since you would need the uniques, I would recommend playing something else that doesn't require uniques and then working into this. The Fulgurite shards, the daggers that you need for this build, are RNG drops. They're not like from a specific boss where you could farm them out. So you just have to wait for them to drop for you. So for me, I would focus on doing a 1 to 75 guide. I'll have one linked below. We have a few of them that you could do. I would use the Shadow Cascade one with the Synchronized Strike, just so Synchronized Strike is already set up. And then, of course, you can transition to it at a later stage. I wouldn't transition until you have at least one of the daggers and maybe even the gloves, but you would want at least one dagger to make sure that your damage was going to be okay. Alright, that's going to be it for this build guide. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, stay safe and enjoy some gameplay.
Pain, an eternity of pain, unchanged. The end comes. The end comes. Destruction. This means nothing. The end will come, all the same.